Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, to another very, very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got some exciting developments. As you can see from the thumbnail, huge, huge day for the Department of Justice, the FBI, several indictments for some key players in different aspects of this grand conspiracy to destroy the United States of America and President Trump, and of course you and me, the American people. We've got David Morens, a top lieutenant of Anthony Fauci. We've also got James Comey. And perhaps even most excitingly, we've got raids all across Minnesota. Recently, the U.S. Department of Energy All right, do me a favor if you haven't yet. Hit that like button. Help us out by sharing the show. That would be sincerely appreciated. And get ready to have a very, very good time. Recently, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This isn't just government spending, it's a declaration of intent because America needs uranium, domestic uranium, and it needs it now. So here's the reality. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium every single year, but we produce less than 1 million pounds domestically. Obviously, that leaves America 98% dependent on foreign suppliers for our supply. It's a critical vulnerability for national security, power generation, and advanced weapons systems. With Russia controlling much of the global enrichment capacity and escalating tensions in Iran threatening nuclear supply, the stakes could not be higher, which is why the White House has made it crystal clear. America must develop its own supply chain. And this is where Kirkstone Metals comes in. They trade under KSM in Canada and KSMCF in the US. They've got decades of uranium and junior mining expertise, and Kirkstone's leadership team knows how to turn exploration projects into real value. But the question is, can they do it again? Kirkstone controls two 100% owned uranium projects strategically located in the Athabasca Basin. This is the richest uranium district on the planet. Same area, same world-class neighborhood, and at their flagship Key Lake project, drilling has already hit high-grade uranium right near the surface, but the team truly believes the real prize lies deep underground. So using a playbook based on the decade's biggest discoveries, they're hunting the massive source below. So let's talk about the Athabasca Basin. It's home to multi-billion-dollar names like NextGen Energy and Denison Mines, but the real upside, it's often the junior explorers that are operating right next door. The Athabasca Basin has delivered over 20% of the world's uranium discoveries, with an estimated $200 to $300 billion worth of uranium identified in the ground, and yet Kirkstone is still sitting at a market cap below $12 million. That's an enormous disconnect between what's found in this district and how some companies are valued today. On January 14th, the U.S. administration reinforced their commitment to domestic energy security, invoking Section 232 via an executive order. It's a formal declaration of resource independence, and it goes beyond support. It's a mandate. Energy security is now national security. and the U.S. government is deploying its full fiscal and regulatory tools to secure the nuclear fuel cycle in North America. Kirkstone Metals, trading as KSMCF in the U.S. and KSM in Canada, is strategically positioned to capitalize on this shift. Now, uranium prices have surged, and some analysts project prices could exceed $100 per pound by 2026 as demand outpaces supply. Federal momentum has already begun to translate into dollars on the ground, including billions in planned funding for domestic uranium enrichment capacity. The sector is entering one of its most active drilling seasons in years, and with its flagship drill program approved, Kirkstone has exploration underway, and they're advancing with a focus on execution. Some companies operating in the district are valued at over $10 billion, and with the U.S. pushing for domestic uranium, Kirkstone could potentially become a leading beneficiary of the reshoring mandate. So if you want to learn more about this critical mineral story and about a team that has delivered big results in the past, check out the link in the description. And a very special thanks to Kirkstone Metals for making today's video possible. All right, welcome back, everyone. You guys, I got kicked out of Getter out of nowhere, and I just had to figure out how to get myself back in. It wouldn't accept my password or my code, but either way, you guys, we have so much to talk about. Like I said in the introduction, today is a very, very big day, and I just realized that I was recording something earlier, and I completely forgot to turn on all of the stuff that I normally have on my screen. So let me do that real quick. All right, there we go. We should be good now. All right, let us dive into all of the very exciting news that we have to discuss today. First of all, I want to give you guys an update on a story that we covered last week. There was a missing GOP congressman, Tom Keene Jr. Now, he's been out of commission. He hasn't spoken to anybody, and people were starting to think maybe something was really wrong. I think that that would be totally appropriate to say that. He is a Republican. He's coming out of New Jersey. He's in a kind of vulnerable district and missing 50 votes or more. That's obviously not going to look too good to your constituents. And it's been over a month and a half, so 6 weeks with nothing from Representative Keene. Now, it turns out that he had some type of a medical emergency. He hasn't specified what that emergency is, but he has put out a public statement. And he said this: I want to thank my constituents and colleagues for their patience as I address a personal medical issue. Now, here's my thing. In order to say a personal medical issue, that sounds like something that you're uncomfortable relaying to people. More like maybe I'm in rehab or something like that. If somebody has cancer or they're dealing with, I don't know, ringworm, they've got alpha gal from a Lone Star tick, they're going to say that, you know, I mean, they're going to say, I've been undergoing chemotherapy, something like that. But I don't know, maybe he does have cancer. He doesn't want to tell people about it. I just seems like everybody's got cancer nowadays. Why wouldn't you just talk about it? You get the support from people. They understand why you're missing. Saying that you have a personal medical issue sounds like maybe you got a problem with like booze and pills or something like that. But I don't want to I don't want to insinuate that that's exactly what's going on. I'm just saying that my experience of watching people dance around things over all these years, it kind of seems like that's what it might be. But I'm going to give Keene the benefit of the doubt. My doctors continue to assure me that my recovery will be complete and I will be back to the job that I love very soon. I expect to return to a full schedule and be at 100%. Now, this is the other reason that makes me think maybe it's not cancer because, I mean, you know, even if you come back, you never really are going to be done with it, right? I mean, a lot of these people, they end up dealing with a couple of rounds of chemotherapy, then they come back and then they got to go away for it again. Either way, I don't know. But he says, I take my responsibility seriously. I've got a strong record of showing up and delivering, except for the last 6 weeks where he didn't bother to tell anybody he wasn't going to be there. But he says this does make this absence all the more difficult. I'm especially proud of my congressional team who have kept constituent services and legislative work moving forward without interruption, and my political team for ensuring the campaign continues to run strong. So is he running a campaign right now? Is he in the midst of like asking for people's votes? I don't know. It seems like maybe his PR team is the one who dropped the ball here because it feels like they should have let people know that he wasn't going to be around for a period of time. Anyways, this personal health matter, personal medical issue, it's a little opaque, if you ask me. I feel like maybe there should be something else that they say here. Redneck Renegade said, could you all keep a prayer in mind for my friend Tim, please? He's a die setter, and he got his head crushed in a press earlier today. Oh, no. Haven't heard if he survived or not. Oh, buddy. Oh, man, I'm sorry. Yeah, definitely pray for Tim. That sounds real bad. That sounds very, very bad. Yeah, we will definitely pray for Tim. I hope that he's okay. I hope that, I hope that he recovers. Wow, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's really, really bad. Okay. 1 second. I need to send an email off. I just remembered. Okay. Gosh, I am so sorry, Redneck Renegade. That is awful, man. Yeah, definitely. Please, you guys, pray for Tim. Pray for Tim. Let me say thank you to Moon Baby as well, who says, hey, family, thank you. To Tracy, who says, Tina, please. Yes, please. Let's do Tina Peters next. Okay. What did I just close? What did I just close right there? Oh, that was what I closed. This is what I meant to close. All right. So, good news. We have heard from the Virginia Supreme Court. They have they have denied a request by the Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones to pause the lower court's ruling that had blocked the certification of the election for redistricting. And that means that the election is going to remain uncertified as this legal process plays out. Eventually, at the end of the day, I think that the Virginia Supreme Court is going to side with the lower court because everything about that election was smelled to high heaven from stem to stern. So, yeah, this is definitely good news for the time being, though, because otherwise, you know, that the government of Virginia would immediately begin the process of rolling all of that redistricting out. Now, I mentioned yesterday that several people had likely ruined their lives and created pariahs of themselves in their families, communities, and workplaces. And I've definitely got some updates for you on people who ruined their lives over the weekend as a result of celebrating a potential assassination of the President of the United States, our President Donald J. Trump. Now, I had actually meant to play this clip for you yesterday. Andy Ogles, congressman from Tennessee, was present at the White House Correspondents' Dinner over the weekend, and he was present when he heard some reporter mention that they were basically hoping that President Trump would be killed. And so Andy Ogles called this terrible woman out. Let's go ahead and listen.
There was a reporter. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. There was a reporter in the room who was under a table. And when the shots went off and everybody's hiding, she said, I hope they killed the Orange MF. That was a journalist in the room who was hoping that when she stood up, the President of the United States would be dead. So I'm coming to a public venue where I know it might be hostile to expose myself to an honest dialogue, an open dialogue. And if you ask me a question and I don't have an answer, I will get you something in writing or we can talk on the phone. But when you have members of the press openly enticing, hoping, talking about killing the chief executive officer of this country, again, Muslim, Jew, Hindu, I don't care. That's a problem.
I'm sorry, what did she say?
I hope they killed the Orange MF.
And of course, she didn't say MF. She probably, well, certainly, she said the whole thing out loud. I hope that Andy Ogles exposes that woman because people like her are the reason we have people like this. Those average, everyday Americans who feel the need to go out on social media and peacock around talking about how excited they are at the prospect of the President of the United States potentially being assassinated. One of those people was a social studies teacher at Kaukauna High School in Wisconsin, and his name is Patrick Meyer. Patrick was on social media openly lamenting the fact that this latest deranged, TDS-suffering, brain worms-afflicted leftist was unsuccessful in taking out President Trump or other members of his cabinet. So Patrick Meyer, of course, as a teacher, is paid by the taxpayers, the people of his community that he serves, teaching their children. Constantly, this guy is online talking smack about President Trump, and that is his right, all right? But you know that he's bringing it into the classroom, and you know that he is injecting it into the minds of the children that he's teaching. Now, of course, after he posted this, he did get a fair amount of criticism online, and it looks like intelligently he decided to take that down. What he had written was this right here. I am not impressed with recent presidential assassins. It's effing embarrassing. Booth, Gutierrez, Zalgas, Oswald must all be spinning in their graves. And then he does a disambiguation of MAGA. He says, MAGA, make American great assassins, make Americans great assassins again. Sad. All right. Now, the school district was immediately made aware of Mr. Meyer's behavior, and they posted on their Facebook, the Kalkana Area School District has been made aware of a situation involving an employee's social media post. The district has placed that employee on administrative leave and is taking additional action to review the matter in accordance with its policies and procedures. The Kalkana Area School District is committed to maintaining a safe and supportive learning environment for all students, families, and staff, and unequivocally rejects any conduct, expression, or behavior that may encourage, condone, or promote violence in any form. The content of the employee's social media post was not related to the school district, and there has been no evidence of risk to the safety of our students and schools. So he is now officially removed from his teaching position. Well, he was placed on leave earlier today, and it sounds like during the course of the day, the school district has made the decision that Patrick is no longer going to be coming back, which is probably the correct decision. Now, we've also got a similar situation, only this time, staggeringly, it's a woman who works for United Healthcare. This is particularly interesting because the CEO of United Healthcare just a couple of years ago was shot dead on the streets of New York by that cold-blooded killer, Luigi. I realize he hasn't gone on trial yet, but I feel like the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Looking forward to seeing the case presented. Anyways, she posted this.
We're cooked as a country when my first reaction to hearing the news about Trump's attempt was, it was probably fake. Like, immediately I was like, oh, that wasn't real. Probably fake. And the second was, aw, they missed? So happy they missed. Oh. Yeah, that's sad. That's when you know we're cooked. We're cooked as a country.
So, we are not cooked as a country, bitch. You're cooked. So Mike Lee posted this and said, now she is a social media manager for United Healthcare. He said, I'd love to hear how United Healthcare plans to respond to the company's social media manager mourning the fact that the president survived Saturday's assassination attempt. And of course, she was picked up by quite a few people. She has also been fired from United Healthcare. They posted on their official X account, violence is never acceptable, and any comments that suggest otherwise are in no way consistent with our mission and values. The person who made comments online about Saturday night's incident at a Washington event where President Trump and many other political leaders were gathered is no longer employed by the company. And it goes on and on and on. I've got a couple of more incidents. Now, you may remember this teacher that I showed you yesterday, Corinne Baum. Corinne Baum, a kindergarten teacher who seemed to have a lot of hatred towards men in general, but in particular towards President Trump. She has also now officially been fired from her job at an Ohio school. And so she will now be in the unemployment line. Good for her. Glad to see it. Probably going to have a little bit of a difficult time finding employment in her local area. Now, she's also changed her TikTok name in an effort to hide herself. This used to be her, Corinne Ann with 3 N's, and now she's Rin LM, and did she gain followers? No, she hasn't lost any followers, but she has privated her account and she made the name different. Oh, that's right. You can't collect unemployment if you're fired. That's funny. That is so funny. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So I guess she's not going to be collecting unemployment. All right. Let's jump over to Bill Asaley. Big day for the Department of Justice, but the U.S. Attorney for the Los Angeles area has just seized more than $2 million from a healthcare business called Expert Wound Care. This is a business that's based in Pasadena, and they provide advanced wound care clinic services. But they were suspected of not really doing this at all. They were actually scamming millions of dollars from Medicare. What they would do is present reimbursements for skin graft substitutes and skin grafts that patients never actually received. So this clinic does business as St. Victoria Home Care, and they've been engaging in fraud for quite some time. And the seizure warrant affidavit that federal prosecutors filed today essentially seeks to seize a lot of property that is currently in the hands of the people who were running that business. So you can see here that they've sent this over to Wells Fargo Bank. And Wells Fargo is just going to have to hand the money over. They're not going to have any choice not to. There have also been a number of seizure orders for other fraudulent business owners that have been written and implemented around the United States in the last week. There's been several houses that have been taken, a whole bunch of cars, luxury goods, things like that. Speaking of luxury goods, Secretary Brooke Rollins also wanted everyone to know that working together with the vice president's fraud task force, they were actually able to identify SNAP benefit fraud by looking into who was on SNAP benefits and who owned Bentleys or Lamborghinis. In fact, in one state, they found 14,000 individuals who were on SNAP, but they were driving luxury vehicles. We're talking 3 Bentleys, 3 Ferraris, 11 Lamborghinis, 59 Maseratis, 141 Porsches, 244 Alfa Romeos, 306 Land Rovers, and 2,098 Teslas. Now, this is only one state. So if people can get away with it in one state, then you know they're getting away with it in virtually every single state. Let's hear from Secretary Rollins on this new effort to identify fraudsters and also seize that property.
Sharing. Previously, no data was shared. We had no idea where the taxpayer dollars were spent. Just one red state. The recent dump of data, we found SNAP recipients had more than 2,000 Tesla owners, 200 Alfa Romeo owners, more than 144 that were receiving food stamps were driving Porsches. Again, this is the data dumps we're getting because before we had no accountability on any of these programs. We now are requiring accountability. The blue states are suing us. They don't want to share the data. And can you imagine, this was a red state where there is actually some taxpayer accountability. Imagine what's happening in the blue states if that's happening in the red states. Sharing.
Yeah, just imagine how much worse it is when you go to some place where these people are protected. Like, I don't know, say Minnesota. Well, it's a good thing because the FBI and the DOJ just served indictments and search warrants on 22 different Minnesota child care centers and businesses. Many of these businesses are places that were visited by Nick Shirley in his bombshell initial report. That includes the Quality Learing Center. None of these businesses were rated for immigration fraud or anything like that. It was all based on evidence presented through the fraud task force put together under J.D. Vance. So the FBI, working along with federal, state, and local law enforcement, executed these 22 search warrants in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area early this morning. These targets were the ones that you would expect: the Quality Learing Centers of the world, the child care centers, the Hawala markets, the businesses where they were sending money back over to Somalia. All of them apparently were reportedly tied to the Somali community. This investigation has clearly been going on for some time, and the social services fraud that all of them were engaging in, have been costing the American taxpayers millions, if not billions of dollars for years at this point. So a Justice Department spokesperson did confirm the operation by saying today the FBI with federal, state, and local law enforcement is involved in court-authorized law enforcement activity as part of an ongoing fraud investigation. So as I stated, these were not related to immigration enforcement, but who knows? There is still time. I'm sure that they're going to find additional crimes once they start looking through the books. But they were focusing on the alleged fraud, child care assistance fraud, Medicaid-funded services fraud like autism support, the pandemic era initiatives. The Quality Learing Center, of course, is famous at this point. As a result of Nick Shirley's report, they later closed, and then, of course, they later reopened. I don't know if they were actually open today or if they got word from Keith Ellison's office that maybe they shouldn't be there. But Minnesota is clearly one of the largest blue states engaging in this type of thing. I hope they go and do Maine next. I know that we've talked about a number of raids that have happened in Maine, but I would love to see an overwhelming show of force like what we saw today. Head on over to Maine and just wrap up dozens of businesses all at the same time. Now, if we talk about the Feeding Our Future scandal, that was over $250 million. If we're looking at the various fake autism scams, that's over $14 million. If we're talking about general estimated fraud that the Trump administration alone has found very recently, we're talking about $19 billion. Lots and lots of fraud that President Trump and this team has been able to locate. So J.D. Vance did comment on the raids as well. He said the task force and the DOJ will be relentless in exposing these fraudsters wherever they may be hiding. And you can see here, he retweeted Bill Malugin right there. Now, let's go ahead. I've got several pieces of video showing you what it looked like to be on the ground. I know all of you were very eager to see exactly how heavy of a hand they took going in, but let's take a look.
Well, federal agents once again descending on the Twin Cities, part of what they're calling a court-ordered investigation into fraud. The Justice Department saying that the FBI is carrying out activity across St. Paul and Minneapolis, signaling a refocused effort to target COVID-era fraud schemes. ABC affiliate KTSP capturing video today of those federal agents on the ground as a law enforcement source is telling ABC News 22 that ABC News that 22 federal search warrants have been executed so far. These raids come more than 2 months after the Trump administration ceased Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota, and the immigration crackdown, as you may remember, led to thousands of arrests, violent protests, and the fatal shootings of 2 U.S. citizens. Let's bring in our Alex Mallon, who's been tracking this. So what more do we know about these raids and why they're happening now, Alex?
They are so somber. They are very, very upset that this is happening. I love it.
Yeah, well, we know that the agents from the FBI and HSI, the Department of Homeland Security's Homeland Security Investigations Division, are taking part in a lot of these raids. We understand it's at least 22 locations, some of which include daycare centers. We've seen this, been a very big focus of this administration. They created an entire division now in the Justice Department with an Assistant Attorney General named Colin McDonald, who was confirmed by the Senate recently and has recently assumed this role of targeting what they say is rampant fraud, especially targeting Minneapolis, where President Trump has obviously singled out the Somali community there and said that they are responsible for a large part of this COVID fraud.
Well, they are. It's not just President Trump saying it. It's the truth. That's exactly how it played out. Come on, bro.
Essentially, basically, the idea is they are using these daycare centers, claiming that people are going there, collecting these grants that were intended to prop up businesses during the COVID pandemic, and not actually having personnel or children there that they are serving. That's what they're trying to identify and prosecute. And we've actually heard from Governor Tim Walz's office. They spoke to KTSP earlier today. A spokesperson said that they actually were part of these raids. The Minnesota AG's office also says they were active participants in at least 5 of the warrants that are being executed.
And that's really what I wanted to get to right there. Both the governor's office and the AG's office, after the raids began, stepped in on social media and tried to take credit for having something to do with the investigations, but we know that that's not true. And at least in terms of Tim Walz, he got called out by Kash Patel. Now, let's take a look and see what Fox said about it. But this is actual footage of the Quality Learing Center being raided.
Now, large-scale raids targeting federal fraud.
And look at that. They took the sign down. I guess they must be closed for business.
Currently underway, federal agents seen leaving the Quality Learning Center. And Brooke Taylor has more on that and what they're looking for. Brooke, good morning.
Hi, Bill. Good morning. Yeah, we have had a photographer there at the daycare since this morning, capturing video of those federal agents just going in and out of the building, collecting evidence as part of the DOJ's fraud investigation in Minnesota. Take a look at this video here. Sources tell Fox that federal agents are raiding about 22 businesses across Minneapolis this morning, and sources say many of them are tied to Somali-owned operations. All of this comes after that viral YouTube video from Nick Shirley. It was back in December. In that video, he visited different child care centers, and you'll remember.
Now, Joan, I saw you there. Joan said they've had 6 effing months to clean up. That's the problem, Joan. It's not about cleaning up. They can't just get rid of records. The records didn't exist in the first place. In order to not be fraudulently taking money from the federal government, you have to have bodies to match up with the dollars that you are taking from the state and the federal government. So that means you've got to have children that are enrolled. You've got to have documentation of that. So if there are no records, then that means by proxy they are committing fraud because they can't back up what they said they were doing. Now, you can take a tally sheet and write down, 75 kids. Awesome. That's good enough for the state of Minnesota. They didn't bother to check. But see, the federal government's going to want to come in and they're going to want to know who those kids are. But if those kids don't exist, then they're not going to be able to do anything about it. And of course, there aren't enough children in the Minnesota area because if you've got multiple kids that you do get signed up for your child care, of course, you're not going to be able to post date them. You're not going to be able to create a big enough paper trail to show that that child was enrolled there for that long. And if somebody else enrolls that exact same child at another location, well, they obviously know that somebody is committing fraud. So there is no cleanup. The problem for them would be record creation, and I simply don't think that they have the capacity to do that.
They were either closed or there were just no children inside, despite receiving state child care funding. Now, the location that you're looking at right now, it's
Principal Enigma says, is there any truth to the rumors about Kash Patel being fired? Hope not. No, they've been trying to say Kash Patel was going to get fired like literally every week since he was confirmed. So, no, that's bullshit coming out of the mainstream media or coming from brain-dead influencers. No, Kash is not going to get fired.
the Quality Learning Center. This is the daycare. It went viral. It blew up on social media because of a sign outside with learning that was literally misspelled. The education secretary at the time claimed that the daycare received $1.9 million while, quote, masquerading as a daycare. And then shortly after that, the Trump administration announced it was freezing child care funding to Minnesota and calling for a full audit of certain daycare centers. And just checking my emails now, it looks like we got a statement from DHS sharing, quote, Homeland Security investigations in cooperation with our law enforcement partners executed criminal search warrants in Minneapolis relating to the rampant fraud of U.S. taxpayers.
Yes, Jana's got my back here. Yes, I own and operate a home daycare. I have to keep all records for 7 years. And that's what I was getting at. Like, it's impossible for them to create as many years of records as they would need to show that they are not committing fraud. So these people are cooked, bro. Cooked. Absolutely cooked. Okay. Here we have a local team. This is ABC 5 talking about FBI agents using a battering ram at another Minneapolis daycare at around 7 a.m.
I'm Eric Rasmussen, investigative reporter with 5 Eyewitness News. We were here just before 7 a.m. on 13th Avenue in Minneapolis.
You know what I love about this? The fact that they were there before the battering ram was used means that the DOJ and Homeland Security investigations told the media to make sure that they were there so that they could actually be on site for that right there. G. Fontes says she actually may have had the decency to not curse and use the initials MF. Liberals are almost always a contradiction to themselves, in my opinion. I mean, it's a possibility, but I don't know. I feel like we're splitting hairs on it.
When federal agents right behind me there used a battering ram to go inside the Metro Learning Center daycare. It's one of several across.
Oh, yeah, that looks like a place I want to send my kids. Look at that. A greasy, burnt-out hole in the side of an industrial warehouse. That's the best place to send your kids to daycare, huh?
Across the metro, raided by federal authorities this morning. Not a lot of details on exactly what they found or what they were looking for, but I can tell you this area is also home to a Somali mall, a lot of Somali American-owned businesses, and I spoke to the manager of that mall who said, given everything that's happened here in the Twin Cities over the last several months, the sight of federal agents once again on scene was unsettling for everybody. But this time, a targeted investigation of daycare centers like this one. I actually had a chance to speak to the owner of this one as he was walking out with those search warrant documents.
Can you talk to us about the FBI operation here today?
Nothing I know.
Did they share anything with you?
Just this paperwork that says I'm going to prison.
Only the documents?
Yes. He said his center is still serving children and families here. Of course, we're going to follow up.
Yeah, something tells me that's not true. Otherwise, the FBI wouldn't be showing up. All right, now let's hear from a real local news outlet, Alpha News, probably my favorite Minnesota outlet. Here it shows federal agents raiding the Somali Senior Center in Minneapolis. Now, remember that story we did several months ago about how the police and EMTs never get called out for the deaths of Somali elderly? Like as if these people simply just never expire. They live forever like Methuselah. Well, if you want to investigate something like that, probably the place to go is going to be a senior living center. I wonder what they're going to find out here. Let's take a look. Oh, yeah. They got a lot of boxes there, kids. Well, yeah, I mean, every single KYZ Rumble, all they need to do is see who owns these places and then look and see what their houses look like. I mean, it's not hard to tell who's grifting in these endeavors. Bruce, Fox hasn't mattered for years, homie. It was always controlled opposition, just like all of the other news outlets. All right. Now, again, there were apparently 22 different businesses. Dustin Grage, who is a local reporter for Town Hall in Minnesota, he's got 16 of the 22 confirmed locations from today's raid. And that includes the Quality Learing Center, Global Star Therapy LLC, Empower Skill Academy, Aspen Associates LLC, that's in Minneapolis, Aspen Associates LLC in Fridley, Mendota Autism, Baby Halimo Child Care Incorporated, Burnsville Learning Center, Fabulous Restaurant and Catering, Metro Learning Center, The Original Child Care Center Incorporated, Love and Care Child Care Center LLC, Mini Child Care Center Incorporated, Fahey Child Care Center, Somali Senior Center and Adult Day Services, and then A Plus Universal Child Care and Learning Center, A Plus. Wombs R Us says that is 1 day's worth of paperwork from a senior living center. Well, the video went on for several more hours, so definitely didn't want to waste everybody's time. I just wanted to see if anything happened in that short time. But again, Nick Shirley went to many of these businesses that were listed here. Of course, as we were saying just a moment ago, you just got to look and see who the owner of these places are. And then you look at the business, and it's quite clear which of them are engaging in fraud. Now, I had mentioned Kash Patel calling out Tim Walz because, of course, it's been quite clear that Tim Walz and Keith Ellison are not interested in playing nicely with the federal government. They have repeatedly been given opportunities to conform to the wishes of federal investigative authorities, but they continue not to do so. They've basically obstructed at the state level as well. There are currently impeachment proceedings going on against Tim Walz. I mean, he's not going to be in office much longer regardless. But Tim Walz tried to steal credit for the massive federal raids, not state raids, that were going on all over the Twin Cities area today. These 22 different businesses, including autism, daycare center, Medicaid, social services, adult daycare, all of them. So Walz, of course, writes this: if you commit fraud in Minnesota, you're going to get caught. And that's exactly what we saw today. We catch criminals when state and federal agencies share information. Joint investigations work, and securing justice depends on it. Today's raids by state and federal law enforcement happened because our state agencies caught irregular behavior and reported it. That's how the system is supposed to work, and our agencies will keep at it as long as there are fraudsters around to put behind bars. Wow. That's a bold statement. Kash Patel replies and says, come again? The FBI and DOJ with our DHS partners drafted and executed every search warrant today. But go ahead and take credit for our work while we smoke out the fraud plaguing Minnesota under your governorship. Now, everybody who has followed this story knows how ridiculous Tim Walz's statement is. I mean, we've had whistleblower after whistleblower come forward talking about how they have attempted to bring this to the attention of state government, and repeatedly they get knocked down over and over again. They've had retaliation against them. Let me take you to Keith Ellison's statement because it's no less attempting to garner the attention and the accolades of all of these various busts. So 2 hours ago, reminding you, Keith Ellison said that they were present for 5 of the raids. So that would mean that they did not have information. Now, Twin Cities police have also put out an announcement. It was stated that local police were involved, but we don't know what local police. It could have been state police. It could have been their state investigative body, but it certainly wasn't Twin Cities police because they put something out and said we had nothing to do with any of this. They were already preparing for blowback from residents. But Keith Ellison says, this morning, in conjunction with agents from the FBI and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Inspector General, investigators from the Minnesota Medicaid Fraud Control Unit executed federal search warrants at 5 separate sites of Medicaid-funded businesses claiming to provide early intensive developmental and behavioral intervention services. These efforts are yet another example, yet another. Show me one, Keith Ellison. Show me a single example prior to this where any of these fraudulent businesses were brought up on charges or even had their businesses questioned or searched. Yet another example of my Medicaid Fraud Control Unit and their ongoing collaboration with federal law enforcement in our shared mission to hold those who defraud Minnesota's Medicaid program accountable. Again, $19 billion sucked out of the state and sent overseas or into the bank accounts of Somali fraudsters here in the United States since Keith Ellison and Tim Walz have been in power. Virtually no one has been held criminally accountable, save for perhaps the Feeding Our Future defendants, and the state government had virtually nothing to do with that either. Now, of course, interestingly enough, someone on an industrious anon in community notes wanted to make sure that the record had been set straight. Important context. This was a federal action organized by the FBI and the HSI, who directly worked with local law enforcement. FBI has pushed back on the claim that state involvement was overstated. Ellison has faced bipartisan criticism for failing to curb widespread fraud in Minnesota. Is this note helpful? Yes, it is. Why? Because it cites high-quality sources, it's easy to understand, it directly addresses the Post's claim, and it provides important context, along with neutral and unbiased language. Thank you so much. So, holding Keith Ellison accountable one fake post at a time. Thank you very much to Principled Enigma. He says, as of approximately 10 years ago, the Fox employee count included approximately 70% Democrats. That would not surprise me at all. All right. Real briefly, before we get into the news about David Morens, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. And actually, for some reason, my screen is not working. Okay, so that should fix it. Okay. All right, my friends. Thank you once again to the good folks at Rumble. And as you guys know, banks are not your friends. They're not looking out for you. They can shut your accounts down. They can freeze your cards. They can tell you what you're allowed to buy, who you're allowed to support, because big banks and financial institutions have total control over you, and they know it. And they use it when they want to, because financial independence matters, and banks do not offer that to you. Right now, more than ever, so many people have been debanked. So many people have had their accounts taken and told that they are not welcome to do business with those banks anymore. So Rumble has introduced the Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet built for real freedom, because with Rumble Wallet, you control your own money. Not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. And you can use it to buy a number of digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin. It's all in one secure place. It is no permission necessary, no middleman, no cancel button. Nobody's going to shut it down on you. So that also when you want to support content creators you believe in on Rumble, you can use that Rumble Wallet app to directly tip them. It's secure, instant, and without interference, and they're not going to take a cut off the top. It's not a credit line they can shut off. It is your wallet forever to protect for the future and for your family. So when the system fails and institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the real difference between security and vulnerability. And this is not about politics. Anybody can use it. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control of your money today. Download the Rumble Wallet now and step away from big banks for good, and you'll get true ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. Thank you very much to the good folks again at Rumble. All right, so a lot of people have, for many years, have been dying for accountability when it comes to the COVID-19 scam, to the plandemic. Many others have also suggested that if there was going to be one thing that would truly open the minds of Americans beyond issues of the right and the left, it would be the plandemic, because this is a non-political issue. Of course, it did seem that a lot of pressure was coming from the left, certainly a lot of hatred and vitriol directed at the right. But let's be clear, it was politicians on both the right and the left that adopted the draconian COVID policies. And it was the government, unfortunately, of President Trump that usurped his authority and instituted many of these things. One of those people who was directly involved in covering all of this up and making sure that our country suffered for a really long time, was David Morens. David Morens was one of Anthony Fauci's top cronies, and he was an incredibly destructive figure. And it was reported first by the New York Post this morning that 78-year-old David Morens, a former senior advisor to Anthony Fauci, was charged with several crimes. Now, these crimes are nothing to shake a stick at. We're talking conspiracy against the United States, destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations, concealment, removal, or mutilation of records, and aiding and abetting. Now, the Post also noted that in the indictment, which was unsealed late yesterday in Maryland federal court, there are also two unnamed co-conspirators who are in that indictment as well. They too concealed, removed, destroyed, and caused the concealment of and removal of federal records to evade FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, and Federal Records Act requests. Now, I see it in the chat. Where's Fauci? Well, let me tell you, what was it that John Solomon said recently? In order to bring down a large criminal investigation, you've got to get somebody beneath the guy that you want to get so that you can flip them, and then they will testify against the people that you really want to get. Now, David Morens, I'm sorry, I don't remember if he is an actual doctor or not, but he was a senior advisor to Fauci for a long time, from 2006 to 2022. He conducted official government business from a private email account, and he asked the National Institute of Health's FOIA liaison for tips on how to evade records requests. And we know this. I reported on this back in spring of 2024. We learned it from, ironically, FOIA requests. So he said in his email, there is no worry about FOIAs. I can either send stuff to Tony, who is Anthony Fauci. He is directly implicating Anthony Fauci in his criminal attempt to defraud the United States of America and, of course, to withhold these records, mutilate or destroy these records. I can send this to Tony on his private Gmail, or I can hand it to him at work or at his house. Now, Morens wrote this in April of 2021. He continued by saying he is too smart to let colleagues send him stuff that could cause trouble. Again, that also directly implicates Anthony Fauci. Now, these two possible co-conspirators, I've got a couple ideas on who they could be. Anthony Fauci comes to mind immediately as a possibility, but we don't know yet because that is still ongoing. Now, 2 months prior to that email where Morens describes in detail the process to evade a FOIA request, Morens said in another email, I learned from our FOIA lady here how to make emails disappear after I am FOIA'd, but before the search starts. David Morens is directly describing a process that was given to him by the woman hired by the U.S. government expressly to stop this sort of thing from happening and make sure that open records requests happen. So I can pretty much guarantee you that she will be someone who will be indicted in the very near future. But David Morens is just a little bit better known. Now, they go on to talk about the fact that Morens always used Gmail because his NIH email would be FOIA'd constantly. He wanted to make sure that none of the emails would then reach the New York Times. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who I just want to say, Todd Blanche, that dude is a freaking all-star, first-round draft pick. Is there anybody here who disagrees with me on that? I mean, he came right in and he immediately started indicting people. Like, that is what I want. That is exactly what I want. Don't stop. Continue to go. Todd Blanche says these allegations represent a and now just imagine Todd Blanche saying this in that cool bulldog affect that he has. He looks like a sleeper agent. Like, Todd Blanche is totally calm, cool, and collected, but that man could slit your throat at any moment. These allegations represent a profound abuse of trust at a time when the American people needed it most, during the height of a global pandemic. As alleged in the indictment, Dr. Morens and his co-conspirators deliberately concealed information and falsified records in an effort to suppress alternative theories regarding the origins of COVID-19. Government officials have a solemn duty to provide honest, well-grounded facts and advice in service of the public interest, not to advance their own personal or ideological agendas. I'd also like to remind you, all of those people who were like, you can't trust Todd Blanche. I know Todd Blanche is a bad guy because I saw somebody say it on the internet. And now Todd Blanche is running the Justice Department, and he is completely annihilating everything in his path. So this is what I see. Every time I see people complaining about a particular person in the administration, it makes me think that there has to be an op going on about them. Lee Zeldin, I think he's doing a great job at the EPA. And I have to be honest, I think Lee is soft, especially when you compare it to Todd Blanche. I think that Todd Blanche is a stealth murderer. I think that Lee Zeldin is the guy who, shakes your hand and takes you to lunch. I don't want Lee Zeldin to be the Attorney General. I think that one of the reasons you heard his name early on is because somebody put it out there, so then people would start saying, oh, sure, Lee Zeldin, he's a great guy. That's not what we want. We don't want nice guys in these positions, especially not the DOJ, especially not the FBI. We want covert killers in these positions. Now, Morens also saw the infamous EcoHealth Alliance. Now, you all remember EcoHealth Alliance. That was exposed by an animal welfare group called White Coat Waste, for handing millions of American taxpayer dollars to the infamous Wuhan Institute of Virology. Why? For gain of function research on those dangerous coronaviruses. Now, as we have said before, the Wuhan Institute of Virology played a crucial role in the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic after the virus allegedly escaped from the lab. And of course, millions of people around the world, either directly or by some indirect factor, not only lost their lives, lost their livelihood, everything shut down, and it destroyed all of the momentum that President Trump had going into 2020. Now, Senator Ron Johnson has been pushing for accountability on Morens and Anthony Fauci for quite some time. He spoke out and said, more than 2 years ago, my PSI staff discovered and made public emails in which Dr. David Morens bragged to colleagues about his efforts to avoid transparency by destroying federal records using his personal email to communicate on sensitive issues. Apparently, this is what they do in deep state government. Today, the OIG at HHS announced that Dr. Morens has been arrested. They didn't just charge him. They showed up at his house and they put him in handcuffs, you guys. He's been charged with conspiracy and the destruction of federal records. I applaud OIG's new leadership for taking this much-needed step forward to hold Dr. Morens accountable. Okay. The best is yet to come, says, I think Todd Blanche held up indictments to push Bondi out, and now he comes with two things at once. Maybe that was the plan. But what gives you that impression, though? I mean, what evidence do we have that Todd Blanche actually held up indictments? I mean, yeah, I haven't seen anything. I mean, it's just, it's theory crafting. That's the only thing that I see on any of this. But the one thing that I can say is that Pam Bondi had a year and a half, and this is where we're at now that she's gone. What I can suggest as a possibility is that Pam Bondi, while she was at the Department of Justice, a whole bunch of stuff got done, just not indictments and not arrests. Unfortunately, all of that other stuff had to be done even in addition to what we're seeing now. So I still am of the opinion that Pam Bondi may have been highly successful given the mission that she had during that time that she was there. And now we've moved into phase 2, which is where Todd Blanche, the Bulldog, is supposed to come out in the middle of the night, stabbing people in the back. Okay, so we are going to watch this testimony of Dr. David Morens from one of these COVID-19 hearings from a couple of years ago. This is right around the time that Ron Johnson discovered that he was directly suppressing evidence that people were seeking to gather from FOIA requests. Let's take a listen.
And as you've said, you previously testified that you did not delete any federal records. But on February 24th, 2021, you wrote, quote, I learned from our FOIA lady here how to make emails disappear after I'm FOIA'd, but before the search starts. So I think we are all safe.
Oops.
Plus, I deleted most of those earlier emails after sending them to Gmail, end quote. And the next day on February 25th, 2021, you wrote, quote, but I learned the tricks last year from an old friend, Marge Moore, who heads our FOIA office and also hates FOIAs, end quote. Yes or no, is Marge Moore the FOIA lady you were referring to?
She was at the time. I believe she's retired since then.
Did the NIH FOIA office instruct you on how to delete emails or avoid FOIA?
No.
On October 25th, 2021, another scientist wrote, quote, David is concerned about the privacy of text and other messages from his...
Whoa, hold on. Waylon Jennings in the YouTube chat says, crazy story. Had a friend who went on a motorcycle ride in the country in Minnesota, came over a hill, hit a horse that wasn't tied up. It was an Amish horse, and the cause of death was COVID. It's insane. And both his friend and the horse died. Damn, dude, I am so sorry to hear that, but it's not the first time I've heard that story. I have heard stories of people dying in car wrecks, and the cause of death was COVID.
Cell phone to you and me because he has been using a government phone. This came from Tony, end quote. Sir, did you...
Okay, so if you remember back to when we read through all of these emails some time ago, there is no doubt in my mind that Anthony Fauci is going to be indicted as well. Okay, it's just that Anthony Fauci is the prize. What they have to do is indict as many people around Anthony Fauci first so that they create an impenetrable shield of guilt, and then they go for him last.
Ever have any conversations with Dr. Fauci regarding using personal phone or email to communicate with Dr. Daszak?
I don't remember it. It's possible. I probably wouldn't have remembered it, and I don't remember it. He and I usually never talked about that kind of stuff. It would be very unusual if it happened.
Certainly not on government email.
On January 18th, you testified that you did not have any conversations with Dr. Fauci regarding EcoHealth. On October 25th, 2021, you wrote, quote, Peter, from Tony's numerous recent comments to me, they're trying to protect you, end quote. You meaning EcoHealth and Dr. Daszak. Dr. Morens, did you ever have any conversations with Dr. Fauci regarding EcoHealth?
Well, the ones you just mentioned, I don't have any recollection of that.
No recollection?
No recollection, no. Let me just say what I do remember is one time in a face-to-face meeting, he referred or alluded to some stuff that was in the press. I don't even think he said what it was, but it was about, I assumed it was about Peter's grants and press reports about it, and the ending of the grant. And I said to him, sort of out of the blue, guessing what he was really thinking, I said to him, Tony, I know you would have never been involved in getting rid of that grant. And he didn't respond. He just sort of looked at me and...
So Dr. Fauci was always a big defender of EcoHealth and their right to receive federal funding?
I can't speak for him. I think he had great respect for them. And when the grant problems came about, I think he was troubled by it. In fact,
grant problems, by which he means knowingly funding illegal activity in the form of gain-of-function research with the express intention of creating a deadlier strain of a virus that didn't exist. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to say, well, COVID wasn't deadly. No, it wasn't. Doesn't mean they weren't trying to make it deadly. Also doesn't mean that they weren't trying to simply make it as communicative as possible so they could use the excuse of an infection to then do what they did.
Let me just, I just thought of something that I'd forgotten to say. At some point, somebody, it may not have been Tony, but it might have been Hugh Uppencloss, somebody said to me, Peter's his own worst enemy because he made some mistakes on that grant.
I would say that's a factual statement.
Certainly is. Let me say thank you very much to Principal Enigma. After decades of scandals, I got so fed up with Wells Fargo's crap that when I left them, I threw their business card at the manager's desk and said his bank should be renamed the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And I fully agree with this statement. He says, let's not fail to understand that what Todd Blanche is doing right now is a result of what Pam Bondi put in place. That's why he hit the ground running. Pam, also very VP.
On April 21st, 2021, you wrote that Dr. Fauci is, quote, too smart to let colleagues send him stuff that could cause trouble, end quote. On June 16th, 2020, you wrote, we're all smart enough to know to never have smoking guns, and if we wouldn't put them in emails, and if we found them, we'd delete them.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Yeah, he's not fine. He knows these statements are going to lead to his imprisonment later.
Now, did you ever have conversations with Dr. Fauci regarding deleting emails?
I don't remember any such thing.
You don't remember?
No, sir. And it would be very, Tony and I don't have those kind of conversations.
Did you ever delete any official records?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, but again, we're at the issue of defining what's a federal record. I deleted a lot of emails. I do it every day. But in my mind, they're trivial things not related to government business.
Well, unfortunately for Dr. Morens, they were directly related to government business, and he was all too aware of it. Now, mentioned this earlier, but there are two unindicted co-conspirators that are listed in here. Certainly, I think that Anthony Fauci could be one of them. I think Peter Daszak is likely one of them. And I think that also highly likely that Margaret Moore, the FOIA lady that he mentioned in those emails, is also probably one of them. Now, just because we've only got two unindicted co-conspirators in this indictment doesn't mean that there won't be additional co-conspirators who are indicted in the future. We are merely looking at a microcosm. Now, what's also possible is that these unindicted co-conspirators could be used as witnesses against Dr. David Morens and Anthony Fauci. But what I will tell you is that on the court docket related to Dr. David Morens' case is a currently sealed related case. Now, that related case could be related to either one or both of those co-conspirators that are mentioned in his indictment, or they could simply be an indictment for a related person like an Anthony Fauci, and the Justice Department is simply not ready to bring that forward yet. So this is highly notable, and be expecting to see a related indictment in a case very, very soon. So cannot wait to see what that entails. All right. Now, here again, Josh Christensen says he believes these two uncharged co-conspirators are Peter Daszak and Dr. Gerald Koish, who is an associate director of Boston University's National Emerging Infectious Disease Laboratory Institute. And that would be also according to emails that were exchanged with David Morens. In this email, where Morens writes to both Daszak and Koish, he says, please read and acknowledge receipt. Actions needed regarding series of numbers. Jerry and Peter, this is sent from my Gmail account. Please send all replies here to my Gmail. I have let Tony know, but I have not spoken to him directly. There are things I can't say except Tony is aware, and I have learned that there are ongoing efforts within NIH to steer through this with minimal damage to you, Peter Daszak of EcoHealth Alliance, and colleagues, and to NIH and NIAID. No guarantees, but let us hope. I imagine this will be handled at the level of Francis and Tony, meaning Francis and Tony are going to be the ones that are making the decisions within NIH, and I don't expect to be in the loop. So this email also right here directly contradicts what Dr. Morens just said a moment ago in his testimony as he was being questioned by James Comer. He clearly talked to Anthony Fauci about these things, and he has lied under oath in addition to everything else that this man did. Let me say thank you so much to Good Dog 45. Thank you for the can. Enoch says, Zach, you might want to check out my take on the bees later in the show. Keep up the good work. Okay, definitely. Let me pull that up. I will have that ready. Tracy says, I had a client who said that They should have picked a better shooter after Butler. She was dead 6 weeks later. Ouch. Well, karma's a bitch. Filter Dog says the U.S. Marshals have been ordered by a federal judge in North Carolina to take James Comey into custody. You just blew my my story. We'll get to that in a moment. No thanks, Joe. Good, thank you for that, though. No thanks, Joe. Good Tuesday to you, Zach and Lisa. I hope the two of you had a great weekend, and I look forward to the who, what, where, when, and why to become exposed this week, and your fine reporting on it. God bless, be safe. Thank you for that. Darla says, thanks, Zach and Lisa. Melania Snakeskin stills stiletto comms that the lizards have arrived to the White House. Filter Dog says, this witness looks like Larry Sinclair. He does kind of look like Larry Sinclair, although just not as effeminate. Filter Dog says, I think the Comey indictment is weak, but could be used as leverage to get Brennan. This is merely the opening salvo. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Let me pull up this tweet from my good friend Enoch. The bees were told today, and it wasn't just a photo op. During King Charles III's White House visit, President Trump walked the royal couple straight to the newly expanded beehives on the South Lawn. Melania had just unveiled a hive shaped like the White House itself. Then a live bee calmly landed on Trump's open palm while the king and the queen watched in surprise. This wasn't random. In ancient British and Scottish tradition, especially among royal and rural families, you must formally tell the bees of any major change in the household. A death, a marriage, a new master in the house. Fail to do so, and the hive may abandon you. When Queen Elizabeth II passed in 2022, the royal beekeeper performed this ritual at Buckingham Palace and Clarence House. The queen is dead, long live the king. Today, Trump, who we just learned is a distant Scottish Stuart cousin of the royals, President Trump, they found this out, and they announced how President Trump is actually related to the royal family. And he posted on Truth Social, that's awesome. I've always wanted to live at Buckingham Palace. Publicly showed the thriving American hives to the king. In the esoteric reading, this was a modern telling of the bees for the post-Elizabeth era, a symbolic handover and alignment of the two hives, the nations and societies themselves, under a new stewardship. This was a very public demonstration, Trump standing tall as the one in charge, and the king quietly capitulating on American soil. I think you're right, Enoch. The bees and the world just witnessed who holds the hive now. Wow, that is pretty cool. Look at that. And President Trump, cool as a cucumber. Totally not bothered by the bee landing on his hand. Meanwhile, even Melania, she's like, oh, I love it. It's Tony Man says, hey, Zach, just checking in with you and all the Red Pill family. I'm doing good, but I have a lot of physical therapy ahead. Good, brother. It's good to see you out there. I'm glad that you're doing okay. Continue to work. You will get back your mobility. Thank you to BDR1776. Trump just posted on Truth this trust and know Dr. Death isn't sleeping well, and it has a Dr. David Martin post about Dr. Fauci. Ooh, well, hold on. I will pull up that post from President Trump. This is good, Enoch. I like this. I'm going to retweet that. Okay, let's go to... Okay, so I'm 11 hours back, and I don't see anything related to that. So if somebody can find that, I mean, but it's not showing up on my timeline for President Trump. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Okay. All right. Now, continuing. James Comey. Yes, James Comey has been indicted. Saw it first reported by CNN earlier today. And this indictment, although people may think it is weak, this is in regards to James Comey's 8647 photograph that he posted some time ago. In case you've been living under a rock, James Comey was allegedly walking on the beach with his wife, sees this on the ground, of course, totally apropos of nothing. He just notices, wow, look at that. A cool shell formation on my beach walk, and people immediately jumped on it and said that James Comey was attempting to insinuate that President Trump should be assassinated. 8647. Of course, you can take it a number of different ways, but we know how these people think. We know that they've tried to kill President Trump already on a number of occasions. So it's not too much of a stretch to suggest that James Comey would like to see President Trump removed permanently. Now, James Comey responded to the indictment in a video posted on his Substack. Let's go ahead and pull that up.
Well, they're back. This time about a picture of seashells on a North Carolina beach a year ago. And this won't be the end of it. But nothing has changed with me. I'm still innocent. I'm still not afraid. And I still believe in the independent federal judiciary, so let's go. But it's really important that all of us remember this is not who we are as a country. This is not how the Department of Justice is supposed to be. And the good news is we get closer every day to restoring those values. Keep the faith.
All right. Yeah, so I would expect nothing less from James Comey. His typical smug demeanor, his nice guy, Boy Scout attitude. This is, in my opinion, not about the weaponization of the Justice Department. This is about trying to get James Comey in whatever way we possibly can. And yes, I agree with you, Filter Dog. It does seem like a small thing at the end of the day, but it opens the door to a lot of other things. BDR says not Trump, +++. So I don't know +++ on Truth Social. Denise Ann says, I love that they gave the royal family honey made right here in the good old in the good old US of A. Made in Trump's backyard. They didn't waste money on frivolous, expensive gifts that don't mean anything to the royal family. Yeah, I mean, what do you give the people who have virtually everything? But honey made here in the United States of America, right on the verge of our 250th birthday, the emancipation of the United States of America, leading to our own sovereignty from the government of the United Kingdom. That surely must have been humiliating for the royal family in a number of different ways. You got to love it. All right. Now, we've also got some information here. This is from Fox.
Indicted former FBI Director James Comey for a second time. Justice correspondent David Spunt's got the story. He's here in Washington. Hey, David, they're going to go at it again.
John, they're going at it again, not even a year after they went at it after the first time. We're told this via several law enforcement sources. We're told this is related to an Instagram post from the former FBI director last year when he posted on the beach. You may remember there was a formation of shells that said 8647.
Now, what this does is it opens James Comey up to discovery. And if they can convict him on this charge, then it can potentially put him in prison for decades. Now, with decades of prison, effectively a life sentence for James Comey hanging over his head, it would be that much easier to flip him and get him to give information about others inside the grand conspiracy. So let's hear from Attorney General Todd Blanche detailing exactly what it was James Comey was indicted for.
Today, a grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned an indictment against James Comey on 2 counts. The first count is that on or about May 15th of last year, he knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. Count 2, same day, May 15th, 2025, that the defendant, James Comey, knowingly and willfully transmitting in interstate commerce a communication.
Okay, and no, I want to be very clear, Linda. It is not a small thing to threaten to kill the President of the United States. What I think that people are thinking in terms of it being weak is in order for the Department of Justice to be able to convict James Comey, they have to convince a jury of James Comey's state of mind at the time that he posted it. Now, James Comey has only publicly said that, oh, I didn't realize what it was, or certainly I didn't think that it meant killing the president. But what my statement was is that it opens James Comey up to discovery. If we get to see James Comey's private communications giving us a bit of an insight into his state of mind, that may be where we could potentially get this guy convicted. So no, of course not. It is not a small thing to threaten to assassinate the President of the United States. That is what the Department of Justice alleges James Comey did. But of course, they're going to have to prove that that's what James Comey did. I think that many people would like to see James Comey indicted for something a little more overt. Perhaps some of the things that he did while he was the director of the FBI. Not simply this post that he made on Instagram, which he can hand wave away. But the discovery is going to be the interesting piece.
That contained a threat to kill the President of the United States. Both of these counts carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years. So I think it's fair to say that threatening the life of anybody is dangerous and potentially a crime.
And in this instance, I believe that is what James Comey did. Clearly, the Department of Justice also believes that that's what James Comey did, despite what he has said. And I'm sure that they're going to have a fairly strong case when they get to it. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this arrest warrant for James Comey. This tells you that they are far more serious about it than they were the first time around. The first time around, they sent James Comey a summons. This time, they actually sent U.S. Marshals to his home to arrest him. And what's also interesting about this is the jurisdiction in which the charges were filed. This was not in the Eastern District of Virginia, as it was the first time around. I believe it was in the jurisdiction that James Comey was at when he posted the actual image to his Instagram account. So the arrest warrant for James Comey was issued for him after this grand jury in the Eastern District of North Carolina brought back a grand jury indictment for these two charges, both of them carrying 10 years in prison. So the U.S. Marshals were asked to provide Comey with the indictment, and they issued the arrest warrant. So Comey is facing 20 years in prison. We're actually going to look at the indictment itself here in just a moment. So count one is knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. I'm glad to see that they are taking something like this seriously, because when I was growing up, I was always told that you could not make a threat against the life of the President of the United States. You would be immediately arrested. They would charge you to the fullest extent of the law, and they would put you in prison. They took that stuff seriously. But in recent years, it's become permissible among the elite global class of people like James Comey to say these sorts of things online and to hand wave it, as he did. Count two, knowingly and willfully did transmit in interstate and foreign commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill President Donald J. Trump. And, of course, that, again, is his beach walk photograph. I would also like to know who the people were that liked this before it was deleted. I wonder if they can get that information from Instagram, because that also might provide some interesting threads to go down. So, again, Comey said, we were walking on the beach. We went to the beach to prepare for this week, and we were walking back towards the road, and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, why would someone put an address in the sand? And I said, I don't know. And we stood over it. And I said, I think it's some kind of political message. Now, why would he think it's a political message? Well, obviously, it seems to indicate that James Comey had some knowledge about what it was. Of course, I also don't believe for a second that James Comey just found this walking along. I believe that him and his wife made it themselves. So Kash Patel also spoke at this press conference earlier today. Let's hear from Kash, because he speaks a little bit more thoroughly on it than Todd Blanche does.
Thank you. As you heard from the Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney, former FBI Director James Comey has now been indicted for 2 felony counts. While many of you may read this indictment and view this matter as a simple investigation, it is the farthest thing from that. Every single investigation this FBI and our partners at the Department of Justice undertake, especially those that involve the threats to harm or hurt or even kill individuals, whether they hold public office or civilians in our country, are met with the same measure of investigative prowess and tools and personnel in partnership with the Department of Justice as anyone else. As the U.S. Attorney indicated, James Comey will be afforded every matter of due process under the United States Constitution. And as the Attorney General indicated, this has been a case that's been investigated over the past 9, 10, 11 months. These cases take time. Our investigators work methodically. They are
Hold on. Wounds Are Us says indictments come from a grand jury, not the DOJ. Yes, you are correct. The first was in Virginia, I believe, and the grand jury refused to indict. Correct and incorrect. So the first indictments against James Comey were from a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia. They did indict him, and the case was thrown out by a judge because he said that Lindsay Halligan was improperly appointed. So yes, we've had 2 grand juries now indict James Comey in 2 different jurisdictions for 2 vastly different crimes. There is still a possibility that the indictment for James Comey could once again be brought back against him. And there was, I believe, a second set of charges that they were unable to get the case brought again because they changed it because Lindsay Halligan had been taken off. That one, in fact, they were unable to get because it didn't have the exact same circumstances as the first one, and obviously it's got different grand jurors.
career agents, career prosecutors who work these matters. They call the balls and strikes in the field as they see fit pursuant to the facts of the case and the law. They took that information and made a presentment to a grand jury, a jury of peers in the district in which the alleged crime took place, and that grand jury spoke, and that grand jury returned a 2-count indictment against James Comey. James Comey allegedly threatened the life of the President of the United States, and as you all now know, shortly after posting that threat, he deleted that threat and then issued an apology. All of that information was presented to the grand jury, and Mr. Comey will have his day in court and his ability to speak to a jury of his peers. Thank you.
Good luck, James Comey. You're going to need it. All right. So here is the indictment itself. It's rather short. The grand jury charges that on or about May 15th of 2025 in the Eastern District of North Carolina, defendant James Bryan Comey did knowingly and willfully make a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States, in that he publicly posted a photograph on the internet social media site Instagram, which depicted seashells arranged in a pattern of 8647, which a reasonable recipient who is familiar with the circumstances would interpret as a serious expression of an intent to do harm to the President of the United States. Now, because of this indictment being handed down by the grand jury in the Eastern District of North Carolina, of course, the trial is going to take place in the Eastern District of North Carolina as well. I do believe this is an area that President Trump has won previously. So that means that the jury pool is going to be pulled from people who are also sympathetic to the findings of the grand jury. They're going to see this likely in the same light. So if the grand jury was able to take a look at the evidence and say, yes, we agree with the DOJ, I believe that once the DOJ presents their case to the 12 men and women who are going to be chosen for the trial jury, this will also likely lead to the same outcome. So I don't know if it's even going to get to that point. James Comey, again, may find himself in a position where he's asking to make a deal with the Department of Justice so that he doesn't end up in prison for the next 20 years. Even if he is able to make a deal, I hope James Comey serves a significant period of time in jail. But in order for him to give up information that would lead to convictions of other people, definitely he's going to have to give up some big stuff. But if you take a look at the entirety of James Comey's career, he's got a lot of people that he could flip on. Lots of people, pretty much the entirety of the Obama administration, going back to Hillary Clinton and, of course, even Uranium One. I mean, James Comey has been around as a fixture in so many of these various conspiracies that have been ongoing for the last couple of decades. Again, on or about May 15th in the Eastern District of North Carolina for count 2, James Bryan Comey knowingly and willfully did transmit in interstate and foreign commerce, a communication that contained a threat to kill the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, specifically by posting that photograph on Instagram, which depicted the seashells arranged in a pattern making out 8647, which a reasonable recipient who is familiar with the circumstances would interpret as a serious expression of an intent to do harm to President Trump. Violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 875C. Now, upon conviction of any offense charged herein constituting specific unlawful activity, or a conspiracy to commit such offense, the defendant shall forfeit to the United States any property, real or personal, which constitutes or is derived from proceeds traceable to said offense. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Comey recently wrote a book, and so they may be specifically going to seize James Comey's riches as a result of his time in public service, where he then capitalized upon it and talked so openly about his disdain for President Trump. If any of the above described forfeitable property as a result of any act or omission of a defendant cannot be located or has been transferred or sold or deposited with a third party, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, has been substantially diminished in value, or has been commingled with other property which cannot be divided without difficulty, it is the intent of the United States to seek forfeiture of any other property of said defendant up to the face value of the forfeitable property as described above. I'll be very interested to see what it is the government is saying they would like to have James Comey forfeit as a result of this. Very big day. All right, so BDR now says here is the Dr. David Martin post. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. I can imagine what it says. I know David Martin is definitely not a fan. It's just the indictment. Yeah, it's just beginning to happen. Okay. So, yeah, I agree with Dr. David Martin. We are now going to see a series of indictments arising from the COVID grand conspiracy themselves. Thank you very much to Filter Dog. The Supreme Court of Virginia upheld the injunction. Yep, we talked about that earlier in the show. And then Filter Dog says, Comey prosecutor. Oh, this will be the prosecutor overseeing the Comey case. Yeah, I'm not familiar with who is the prosecutor in the Eastern District of North Carolina. This would be W. Ellis Boyle. Apparently, this new indictment of former Director Comey is out of his district. I like him already. He looks pissed. All right, we'll keep him in our sights. All right, now, before we continue, I have another quick message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you haven't yet tried 1775 coffee, you really should get out there and get yourself a bag. It's really good. They've got some of those starter kits available, and in those starter kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast, their smooth medium roast, and their Vitality mushroom coffee that's going to give you clean energy and laser focus without the crash typically associated with regular coffee. It's from the highest quality coffee beans you can get, single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. You're also going to get a couple of goodies, their gold spoon clip, their strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler that's going to look real sharp. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's yours for just $99. This is for all the people who have been watching 1775 blow up and wonder if it's actually worth it. It truly is. And to find out for yourself, you got to head on over to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab one of these starter kits before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like a Rumble does. Thank you very much once again to Rumble. Callie Bratt, that we already talked about that. Yes, Dr. David Morens, unless you're saying that another Fauci associate has been indicted by the DOJ. I would imagine that you're talking about Dr. David Morens. I'll wait. I think that you probably mentioned that in the chat. But yeah, I think that's probably it. James Comey, come on down. You're the next contestant on Let's Make a Deal. Thank you so much. Okay, now let us move on to a couple of stories about politics and other things happening around the United States. So the woman you're seeing on screen is a Democrat congressional candidate. She's running in Pennsylvania. And she was doing a spot on live television last week. And her name, Dr. Alla Stanford. She sat down for a one-on-one interview with NBC 10 out of Philadelphia, discussing her candidacy. She's running in Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. That's where Philadelphia is located. Now, voters are looking to choose a member, a new member of Congress who's going to replace the retiring Congressman Dwight Evans. Now, in the interview, the reporter for NBC brought up Stanford's support for abolishing ICE, and she had a pretty basic question for her that anybody should have been able to answer, especially if you are suggesting that ICE should no longer be an agency. The question was, if we abolish ICE, who should be in charge of enforcing immigration laws? And the woman froze without an answer, and she looked like a fool.
You also said you're running to abolish ICE. This is something that we've heard other Democrats and activists talk about.
Yeah.
From an immigration enforcement perspective,
yes,
who do you think should be in charge of enforcing immigration laws?
It's a good question. And you can pause because I just want to think about it for a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
We need to continue, though.
Okay. Who do I think should be in charge of enforcing immigration laws?
How about immigration and customs enforcement?
Not the executive branch, so not the president. So it belongs with Congress. It belongs with Congress.
Wow, somebody ought to tell this bitch how government works. Anyways, so yeah, very low IQ answer. And this is typical. This is what you're going to see. If somebody suggests that ICE should be abolished, they're not going to have an answer as to who should come in and actually do the job that ICE is actually doing right now. All right. Now, we also have a big win for ICE in regards to their ability to disperse rioters at ICE facilities around the country. Specifically in this instance, the Portland ICE building, where a lot of havoc has been going on since President Trump took office. Now, today the 27th? No, today's the 28th. Yesterday, a court has just eliminated restrictions that had previously imposed by 2 federal judges in Oregon. What they had done is they basically limited the ability of federal officers to use crowd control tools on demonstrators outside of the facility. That includes things like tear gas. This is undoubtedly a win for the administration because it allows those agents that are protecting the facility to use the appropriate crowd control measures to get these people back and stop them from obstructing their job. So a federal appeals court ruled yesterday that officers can use these crowd control weapons outside of ICE enforcement facilities, this one in Portland, without any restrictions. This is pretty much a setback for the protesters and also others that were hoping to impede the efforts of ICE to bring people into the facility to deport them. And it may be a good thing for the people who are living in the area because I think they're all pretty tired of these protesters. They've been set up there basically since the administration began their efforts to deport as many people as possible. There have also been a number of lawsuits filed in the area. Some people who live there feel that the use of tear gas or other chemical munitions by Homeland Security officials is violating their constitutional rights. Nobody has a constitutional right to impede the efforts of federal officials. But 2 federal judges in Oregon that were overseeing these 2 cases that were issued separately by different plaintiffs had both placed preliminary orders that limited the use of these weapons to instances with specific and imminent threats to physical harm. So the Justice Department, of course, appealed both of these injunctions. They argued that the lower courts had exceeded their authority and had, by way of their decision, created dangerous situations, which then cut federal officials off from using these crowd control tools and essentially putting them in a spot where undoubtedly threats of physical harm would come. So the pair of rulings, both issued Monday by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, is blocking those lower court injunctions. You had a case that was brought by tenants of Gray's Landing apartment complex that is directly across the street from the ICE facility. The judges appear to have tossed out that case altogether. That was a 2-to-1 ruling. The appeals court judge, Eric Tung, found out there is no such right to be free from exposure to tear gas. If you live across the street from an ICE facility and you've got protesters that are impeding the efforts of those officers from doing their job, mandated by Congress and, of course, required to keep the streets safe, well, that's just too bad. You probably should move someplace else if you don't want to be around something like that. No such right exists in the Constitution, Tung wrote. Nothing in our constitutional text or structure evidences that this is a right to be free from having to deal with tear gas. Attorneys for Gray's Landing tenants and operators did not immediately respond to questions about the appellate judge's decision. In another case that was brought by the protesters and independent journalists that have been posted up outside the facility, the same 3-judge panel also ruled 2-to-1 that they had not shown federal agents were retaliating or that there was an unwritten policy targeting demonstrators. Much of the evidence shows the government was trying to clear the entrance to the ICE facility in the face of unrest and an unruly crowd. Appeals Court Judge Kenneth Lee wrote for the majority. While some individual incidents might indicate an arguably disproportionate use of force, they alone do not amount to an unwritten policy of retaliation. The ACLU, of course, was involved in the litigation for the protesters' case. They have also not commented. And, of course, if these people want to F around, then they will now surely find out. Gotta love it. Principled Enigma says, let's see, hold on. BDR says, next week the news will be James Comey dies in a car accident. I certainly hope that's not the case. Maybe he'll still be in jail next week. Principled Enigma says, anyone running for government should be required to have at least 130 IQ, plus achieve at least a 91% rate of success in studies of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I can't disagree with you there. I also think that people serving in government, it would behoove them to have actually served in the military. I also think that perhaps conscription should be the law here in the United States, that everybody should have to serve in some fashion. Now, and that includes women. I think that the draft should also be open to women. Not saying that, perhaps I'd necessarily want to fight alongside a woman on a battlefield. There are certain instances where that would definitely be a disadvantage. But I think that it's fundamentally unfair that women can essentially vote for men to go to war, and men are the only ones who actually have to go to war. That is totally not cool for me. All right. We have some new information about Senator John Cornyn. It would appear that he has been involved in a bit of pay-to-play himself. Not directly, but on behalf of his daughter. He has been making decisions pushing the EB-5 visa, which allows for fraudulent immigration to take place in his state, and it has been directly connected to the profits that his daughter has been making. Now, this is coming from public records, and it shows that there is a clear loop between the decisions John Cornyn makes, the money that his daughter makes, and the politics happening in Texas. So Cornyn has aggressively defended the use of EB-5 immigrant investor visa programs, and there has also been a repeated demonstration of EB-5 fraud taking place in the state of Texas. Now, at the same time that he has been pushing for EB-5s to be expanded and continued to be used, his daughter, Haley Cornyn, is also working as a legislative affairs manager at Greenberg Toreg, and she lobbies clients who then benefit from the programs that John Cornyn has protected while in the Senate. The firm itself has structured billions in EB-5 deals, and then they send their PAC money back to Cornyn to support his continued efforts to remain in power. Of course, he's going to lose his next race. But over the years, Cornyn has called EB-5 a major economic driver for Texas. Certainly for him, he has co-sponsored reauthorization bills. In April of 2025, he stated he was working to keep the program intact, and he added on top of any new high investment visa options. And this is seen in Texas as a major opportunity for scam. There have been a number of EB-5 scams that have been exposed, including American Modern Green out of Houston, They raised almost $50 million from 90 Chinese investors. Then they misused $20.5 million on unrelated projects, and that led to SEC fraud charges, and then they had to pay a settlement. Also, the USA Now Regional Center out of McAllen, they fraudulently raised at least $5 million. They diverted funds into a Ponzi scheme. They used that money to pay for personal debts, to buy luxury cars, and they also bought a restaurant. Investors lost everything, and they never received their visas. Additional Texas cases linked to these same types of EB-5 fraud include a $52 million scheme involving Dan Hong Jean Chen. Chen was sentenced to 30 months in prison in January of this year after many years of investigation, and it required him to be extradited. You can see time and time again, there are cases of fraud, misuse of funds, and the possibility of EB-5 visas being revoked means that John Cornyn would potentially no longer be receiving money from the political action committees that are being supported by these EB-5 frauds. And then, of course, his daughter wouldn't have a job. Haley Cornyn, working at Greenberg Toreg, her lobbyist ID is 65594. She's serving in the Legislative Affairs Management Office in the Texas Government Law and Policy Center at Greenberg Toreg's Austin office. That registration number matches the firm's Austin location exactly. And according to the Texas Ethics Commission disclosures that were aggregated by a group called Transparency USA, she has received a cumulative maximum compensation of $871,260 across all clients since she began registering as a lobbyist. In the 2025 to 2026 year, she's had a couple of high-profile clients, which include Citigroup Washington. They do business as Citigroup Affairs Incorporated. That included $22,239.99. Also, Alibaba Group Holdings, somewhere around the same amount. Also, in the healthcare field, Fresenius Medical Care, the Texas Scottish Rite Hospital. In the technology field, LEO Technologies, Assurion, and Daily Pay. In the finance field, Aflac and Beyond Finance. And then a number of cities also are using EB-5 visas, which include Dallas, Plano, Missouri City, and Port Arthur. Now, Citigroup has also actively financed EB-5 bridge loans and project funding. They have also increased their H-1B visa petitions by nearly 20% year over year into fiscal year 2026, and that's despite the fact that every single one of them comes with a $100,000 application fee attached to them. This surge stands in stark contrast to declines that we are seeing at similar institutions like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase, as their scrutiny is tightened and people begin to take a closer look at exactly who's coming in. Now, in the firm that Haley currently works, she has aggressively branded herself as the go-to industry leader in the EB-5 space. That's so interesting considering that her father is part of the very individuals ensuring that EB-5 practices remain in place. And Greenberg Toreg's global immigration and compliance practice has structured more than $12 billion in EB-5 capital deployments across hundreds of projects. One of these shareholders, Jennifer Hermansky, has personally overseen more than $3 billion in EB-5 capital raises and has guided thousands of investor families through the process. The firm itself has filed and handled over 8,000 investment immigrant visa petitions. And Greenberg Toreg maintains an active public promotion machine, including their EB-5 Insights blog and their popular Immigration Insights podcast series. So it makes a lot of sense why Mr. Cornyn is so interested in supporting people coming into the United States from other countries. These materials that Greenberg Toregs produce heavily promote grandfathering strategies to lock in the current $800,000 targeted employment area investment threshold before the Reform and Integrity Act grandfathering protections expire on September 30th of this year. They also advise directly on source of funds documentation, how to avoid delays, and navigating anticipated fee hikes and regulatory changes. Now let's take a look at some of the money flowing back to Cornyn. The Texas GT fund, Greenberg Toreg Fund, Political Action Committee, has given $6,700 to Cornyn, among other politicos. The federal Greenberg Toreg PAC has given $5,000 to Cornyn's Alamo PAC in the 2023-2024 cycle. And, of course, you could probably go back and see for many years they're doing the exact same thing. So it's a clear feedback loop. Cornyn preserves the visa program. His daughter at Greenberg Toreg lobbies the direct beneficiaries of that program. The firm pockets billions of dollars structuring these deals for those recipients. And then the firm's political action committees reward John Cornyn for his contributions. And of course, his daughter is rewarded through her salary at Greenberg Toreg. Cornyn takes care of his daughter. Cornyn takes care of himself. All of these immigrants then come into the United States. All of this is perfectly legal under the current rules. It may sound unsavory, but it is quite clear that there is a structured monetary incentive for these people to continue to dilute the American population. And the numbers also paint a troubling picture of the enrichment of one Texas family, meanwhile ignoring the perhaps wishes and the hopes of native Texans. You can find all of this information yourself if you want to go online and look through the publicly available documents. But I think that it's important to mention all of this as Texans prepare to vote once again in the runoff election. And hopefully current AG Ken Paxton will be the new Senate member come next year. Saberdo says, Zach, there are so many of these that their family businesses are to rip off their constituents and basically all of us. I am blown away every day by this stuff. No wonder it's taking so long. You are correct, my friend. Gateway Maga 5 says, thank you for the awesome rendition of Happy Birthday on Friday's Only Lands. Love you. Love you too. And once again, happy birthday to you, my friend. I'm glad you enjoyed it. All right. Okay. Yeah, how about no conscription? Well, if I think that conscription gives people a healthy stake in the country. And I think that people should be forced to serve regardless of time of war. And I think that it gives people a sense of responsibility. It gives people a sense of ownership in the country. It also could solve a lot of problems that we have with infrastructure falling apart, people being less responsible kind of generally. If there was no conscription, obviously that would be one thing. But I think that people have developed a sort of narcissistic self-obsession rather than a healthy and patriotic duty to country. That would be why I would be in favor of mandatory conscription for all American citizens for a brief period of time. Doesn't mean we have to go to war. Just means that people should have to serve their country. All right. Now, let's also talk about a crazy decision coming from a federal judge in Maryland, once again overstepping his power, siding with a group of immigrants from countries that have previously been flagged by the administration. These are the nations that we don't want people coming from. Places where people typically tend to be security risks. People where they may be coming from terrorist groups. But this judge is now blocking the U.S. Customs and Immigration Services from pausing their green card applications. This is U.S. District Judge out of Maryland, Judge George L. Russell III. He is an Obama appointee, and he had issued a sweeping injunction last Friday blocking the current director of U.S. Customs and Immigration, Joseph Edlow, from enforcing two policy memoranda. Those memoranda had placed adjunctory holds on green cards and applications from nationals from dozens of countries of identified concern. These policies were a direct response to President Trump's presidential proclamations, which had previously called for restrictions on entry from these high-risk nations because there wasn't proper screening going on. The capability to vet these people simply didn't exist. These are countries like Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, Venezuela, Eritrea, and quite a few others. We've gone through the entire list in the past. When we do this, we enhance the national security reviews of these individuals. It will help us to keep terrorists, criminals, and safety threats out of our country and out of our communities. The judge issued a 39-page opinion, and he said that the rules hold the ruled holds are arbitrary and capricious. And he claimed that Customs and Immigration Services failed to adequately consider reliance interests of the 83 plaintiffs. Many of these people are from these countries, and these are people who want their green cards processed ASAP. I'm sorry, but I don't care how quickly they want their green cards to be processed. I want them to be adequately vetted before they're simply allowed to come into this country. And if we don't have enough people working in this organization to vet them as quickly as the judge thinks they need to be vetted, perhaps the judge needs to get a second job. Come on in and start reviewing these applications. Well, he would probably just allow them to come in without any sort of care or vetting. But the court has now ordered the government must resume the processing of these applications, possibly within the next 30 days. From the decision, the 83 Maryland plaintiffs sued in January and asked for a preliminary injunction against the hold on their applications by people from those countries. They alleged the indefinite pause would cause irreparable harm to their careers, their businesses, and families. And all but 3 of the plaintiffs are citizens from Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iran, Syria, or Venezuela. All of them are on the list that President Trump had previously published. The other 3 are married to citizens of those countries. 25 are spouses or children of the other 58 individuals part of this lawsuit. It's been noted that some of these people are scientists and researchers who are unable to attend international conferences while their residency applications are pending. Boo-hoo. Okay, I mean, like, you're not a citizen of this country. If you're being granted the right to live here, while perhaps, you got some problems back home, then I see no reason why you shouldn't be fully vetted, why we shouldn't look into every aspect of your past. Because we've had quite a few instances of people who seem to be working in prestigious positions, but they're also giant pieces of shit. And they're not the kind of people that we want here in this country. They come here to subvert the United States of America, not to enrich it, and certainly not to become part of the fabric of the American community. Other people involved in this lawsuit, in the complaint, said that they've had to postpone decisions about having children due to the uncertainty. Again, that's absolutely nothing to do with me. You are the one who decided to come to the United States of America, land of the free, home of the brave. If you want to come to the United States of America, I'm sorry, but, I want the government to work on a faster timeline, too. In fact, I do. I want people to be arrested. I want people to be indicted faster than they are. But there's nothing that I can do about it. Some things are just out of your hands. If you have to wait a little bit longer to have children, to start a family, use it as an opportunity to continue building your nest egg. In fact, many Americans have to do just that. I would hazard a guess, and I'd say that there's probably people all over this country who have to wait longer than they want to start their families or to start their lives. Because, of course, the opportunities are simply not there in the same way that they were in the mid-20th century. I would say that there are probably plenty of people who would like to do things differently, but unfortunately for them, God hands them a set of circumstances, and the only opportunity you have in your life is to continue working within the boundaries of those circumstances. So, the judge granted their request for this preliminary injunction, and he decided to preserve the status quo before the indefinite pause, ruling that U.S. Customs and Immigration Services policy memorandum counts as a final agency action, which is eligible for court review. So Russell ruled that the plaintiffs were likely to succeed on the merits of their claims and that they were likely to suffer irreparable harm without final decisions on their applications, and that a preliminary injunction would serve the public interest. It serves their interest. It does not serve the public interest. He declined, however, to order the agency to process the application within 30 days, as the plaintiffs have requested, because they're all in different stages. Some of them have provided the required biometric data, including fingerprints, photos, and signatures. They're awaiting final approval, while others only submitted their applications shortly before the complaint was filed. So, I guess let's go ahead and get them Gum Gum says, Zach, you're a good part of the solution. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. So if they need to now be processed, you know, the judge didn't say you got to do it as quickly as I want you to. It just now they can say they're no longer on indefinite pause. But unfortunately, we don't know how quickly it's going to take us to get to them. Go ahead and take care of it. Okay, so Principled Enigma says, to the audience, what Zach does is essential to our country. How many of you patriots out there are willing to match my $10 rant to let him know? Over and over and over. Well, that is very kind of you, sir. I do appreciate that. Thank you very much for the generosity and for the suggestion. All right. Now, former Commander Greg Bavino, as a private citizen, is out there in the world. He's got a brand new Twitter account. He's still a great follow. And he just did an interview with America First Post. Let's go ahead and listen to him, because he says now that he's a private citizen, he believes that President Trump 100% supported his goal of 100 million deportations. But the reason things slowed down is because of unfortunate political pressure from his inner circle and, of course, donors. They were giving him backlash. I think it is entirely upon us. It's incumbent upon the American people to continue to put as much pressure on the administration as possible, to let them know that mass deportations are exactly what we want. I don't care about the way it looks to the people that I disagree with politically. I don't care that people are bitching and moaning because they're not going to get their tacos on time or whatever it might be. What I care about is that we've got likely 100 million people in the United States of America who don't belong here, who have no legal status, and who are allowed to come into our country to essentially rob, rape, and pillage at will. I want all of them gone. I want every single one to be sent back to their country of origin. And perhaps the administration is working on doing it with a softer hand. Certainly, they have just suggested that ICE, the name ICE, be changed to NICE, which I think is a bit of a slap in the face to these leftists. But that would be National Immigration and Customs Enforcement, not just Immigration Customs Enforcement. Okay, I'll bite. I think it's cute. I think it's funny. Go ahead and do it. But I don't want them to start handing out lollipops to illegal alien kids living on Skid Row in Los Angeles. I want people to be arrested. I want people to be kicked out of this country because they don't belong here. If I moved to a European nation and I just set up a tent on the lawn of a church or wherever and said, well, I'm here, I guess that means you should just let me stay indefinitely. By the way, give me benefits. It wouldn't last very long. The European nation would not be cool with it. All right, but let's hear from Commander Bavino. I sincerely hope that the president or somebody puts Bavino forward for a new position. Obviously, Todd Lyons is no longer going to be the director of ICE. We could have somebody like Bavino be the new director, and I think that that would work out real good.
You know, we've all got the team that we have. When I joined El Centro sector as the chief, I had my team, right, and I had to rely on my team. No doubt, you can't do it yourself. Your camera crews and your team, you have to rely on your team. Same with the Border Patrol, same with the president. He has a team to rely on. Can't do it all himself. And, you know, I think that some of the team may not have the fortitude that President Trump does. Trump's the best deporter that I've ever worked for. Right. You know, some said that Hussein Obama deported more people. Remember, that's a misnomer because he counted Border Patrol apprehension numbers right at the border and said, oh, see, we caught several million that year. So let's don't give him too much credit for that. But Trump's the best I ever worked for. We started off the very best. I mean, look, we went to Los Angeles and absolutely hammered it in Los Angeles. Absolutely hammered it. Same thing with Chicago. Then Charlotte. Let me tell you what, Charlotte was off the hook, folks.
Really?
Our highest one-day apprehension rate was Charlotte, North Carolina. That place was off the hook. And, you know, I felt that we had President Trump. Notice I didn't say any of his other team there. President Trump was behind us. I heard from Secretary Noem, Mr. Lewandowski, hey, President likes what you're doing. Nice. Doing a good job. So that let me know. But, everybody's got their team they're working for. And, I think that sometimes cold feet, whether that's polling numbers or whatever, can come into play. And that's too bad because, again, this is for America. I don't give a damn about the polling numbers.
Me either.
Let me say that again
Well, this is what we voted for. We voted for mass deportation.
Exactly. I don't go into cities to arrest illegal aliens based on polling numbers. I do that as a Border Patrol chief. And those Border Patrol agents, those are some of the greatest patriots I've ever worked alongside. I should never have been able to do that, especially at my age. I'm old. I'm a dinosaur. They even called me oil in the ground. I wasn't even a fossil. They say, sir, you're oil in the ground. But you know what? When you're standing shoulder to shoulder with those folks that did that, again, some of them were there for a year.
So, Ish over on YouTube says, I want all them gone too, but I'm afraid spiking the football in social media with Bovino and his trolling put too much of a spotlight on the deportations and made the backlash worse. I mean, undoubtedly, it gave people some place to focus. But I'll tell you what, Bovino's behavior on social media was exactly what I love and still what I loved and still love about President Trump. He spikes the football 10 times a day. And people have always had a problem with that. And I've always said, I don't give a shit. I didn't elect President Trump to be nice. I didn't elect him to placate to the side that wants to destroy us. I liked Bovino for the exact same reason. I thought that his trolling was great, and I still enjoy his trolling. In this interview, somebody had made an article in The Guardian, I think it was. They said Bovino had ridiculed the U.S. Attorney of Minnesota's Jewish heritage. And I don't know that that happened, but that was the headline. And Bovino just replied, shalom. I think that that was the perfect response to give, because fuck them. Excuse my language, but I don't care what the mainstream media thinks. I don't care. The other side is getting, queasy about mass deportations or showing up in the streets. Unfortunately, those two protesters who lost their life in Minnesota, I think that ultimately was what led to Greg Bovino being retired and for people having something to focus on. And they didn't care about sacrificing their own as long as it led to deportations stopping, the ICE operations and the Border Patrol operations stopping. They got exactly what they wanted. And they will kill to do it. And I think that is more of a reason than anything to continue to do the operation that we were doing before. It goes to show you that these people will kill their own if it means that they are able to effectuate their particular wishes. So, yeah, I don't care about Greg Bovino trolling. I say continue to troll. And I want him back in the administration so bad. I doubt it's going to happen. But this man is an American hero, as far as I'm concerned.
Year. And we're up against that for an entire year. They were fully committed. There was no backing down whatsoever from those Border Patrol agents. That motivated me. Nice. And you know what? I think that motivated President Trump to some extent. I know it motivated Kristi Noem and some of the others. So, his crew there, maybe they need to get out in the fight with us and experience just what that's like, and maybe that would motivate them also.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite literally, a lot of the people in Washington, D.C., they're making all of their decisions on polling and public sentiment. And the fact of the matter is that anytime something rises past a certain level of noise, they say, oh, we got to quell that, not paying attention to the vast majority of us who are saying, no, continue, don't stop, go harder. I wanted Bovino to go even harder. I wanted ICE and CBP to go even harder. But of course, these people are powerful. They have a lot of money behind them. Perhaps once we get some of these people taken down, now that the money is drying up, maybe it will be possible to begin this. But maybe they're also just looking to do this rebrand of ICE and then put them out on the streets and do it in a softer way. But it needs to continue. All right. Now, we were talking about Lee Zeldin earlier, but first let me say thank you very much to several people over here on Rumble. CK Felt says, I only know how to give $1. How do I increase it on Rumble? I believe that there's a slider that you move. Sorry for being ignorant. Love your show. I met you in Nashville. Not a problem, bro. I would never call you ignorant. I believe there's a slider or maybe like where the dollar amount is. You have to type it in. AKA Lou. Good to see you, Lou. She says, jumped on late. Normie husband came home and said Trump is replacing Hegseth and DeSantis. DeSantis is the governor of Florida, so he can't replace DeSantis. No. And no, he is not going to replace Hegseth either. I think Hegseth has been one of the MVPs. So no, he's not being replaced. I haven't seen that. I will look it up, but he can't replace DeSantis. So no, I don't know where he's hearing that. Liberty Hawk, thank you for that. RP is a great patriot. I will match the $10 challenge. I appreciate you. Mimi, good to see us. She says, I am always down to contribute to Zach and Lisa when I can. Amazing Americans right here. Thank you, my friend. BDR1776 says, I'll match for the best news out there, but I still watch the 5 because Dana Perino is hot, even though Fox sucks. Well, my friend, I am not going to give you any grief for that. Also, Off the Leash, thank you very much for the can over on Rumble. I appreciate you. Okay, so, well, the SAVE Act is being held up by John Thune in Congress. So that has nothing to do with ICE or with the sentiment of politico bureaucrats surrounding President Trump. That is entirely 100% on the back of the man controlling the operations in the Senate. Now, I've talked about this before. J.D. Vance is technically the president of the Senate. He should take the gavel from John Thune and rally the troops and get the SAVE Act passed by getting rid of the filibuster or forcing the use of appropriately of the filibuster. But they're not doing it, and that's a big problem as far as I'm concerned. Of course, the SAVE Act isn't going to fix everything, but it's one thing that we need to have in place. All right, so Lee Zeldin got into a bit of a tit-for-tat with Representative Rosa DeLauro. She is that purple-haired Democrat representative that you see right here. We've covered her a couple of different times. I guess she had a meltdown as she was questioning Zeldin during an exchange on climate change and the law. So yesterday, Zeldin was testifying before the House Appropriations Committee, and it was in regards to President Trump's 2027 budget request. So this proposed budget would cut the EPA's agency budget in half if Congress approves it. So Rosa DeLauro, who is from Connecticut, attacked Zeldin for appeasing polluters and ignoring Americans under the false flag of economic growth. Zeldin responded by explaining that he's following the law and pointed out that it says nothing about fighting climate change. Let's go ahead and hear the exchange.
The budget proposal reads like a climate change denier's manifesto. When climate change is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up health care and disaster costs, how can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Now, those are two different things. Climate change doesn't exist. Pollution is definitely a problem. But unfortunately, the restrictions that get put in through the EPA quite often are only affecting the affordability of average everyday Americans, not really addressing larger issues of pollution or the destruction of habitat or companies that are dumping chemicals into the ground. I mean, so many different things that I can think of that should be addressed. But the specter of climate change, the so-called rising of the ocean levels, the melting of the polar ice caps, none of that shit's happening. And if it was, you wouldn't see people like Barack Hussein Obama buying multi-million-dollar properties in Nantucket and living on the beach.
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change?
It doesn't.
Loper-Bright, Supreme Court case. You familiar with it?
No, I maybe others are not, but let me ask.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper-Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative. If Section 202 of the Clean Air Act
No,
doesn't-
but you don't have, excuse me, you do not have the right
I
to
was
say
actually
climate
answering your
change does not exist, that it's a hoax, and that's where this administration
I
is
understand
coming
you're
from.
upset that you don't know what Loper Bright is. Do you know what the major
No,
policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because
You know what the major policies doctrine is?
You know what, let me just
You're a
say this
member
to
of
you.
Congress. You should know.
Well, you have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden
Being very
making
defensive about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last
and
year
you are
with
very,
regards to your
You are
question.
very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment. Now,
Okay.
you just
Do
tell
you want me to tell you what the two biggest
No, I
Supreme
want
Court
you to
cases
tell
are of the
me.
last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA,
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the questions.
I answered your question,
No, you
and you
didn't.
didn't like my answer because
did
you
not
don't know what
answer the
Loper Bright is, because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is,
Chairman,
because you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want
She's so ignorant. I love it. I love it.
to do is to deny. You want
No, I actually read the law. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law.
No,
I
Mr.
read the
Chairman, I
Supreme
don't have
Court
to listen
cases.
to this, and I would say
No,
that,
what you should do for your
that
constituents is actually read statute.
budget is at real risk.
Read
Let
your
me tell
Supreme.
you.
And what's so funny is that the new budget would be half the size of the current budget. They're asking for less money, and here Congress, through Rosa DeLauro, is arguing for why they need more money, and all he's asking for is less. Let me do more with less.
In court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh,
you come here.
you care about science? Now you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
Because
science.
you don't know what Loper Bright is.
climate
Because you don't know what the major policies
You are
doctrine is.
climate
Your message
deniers.
to our folks at the EPA is that you want to
I don't
defund
have
us.
to listen to this BS.
BS. You think I made up these cases?
Yeah, I think you have made up a
I
whole
made
lot of
I
BS.
made up Loper Bright. I made up West Virginia versus EPA. I made up Michigan versus EPA.
Woe is right. What are you doing? Why are
Wait,
you helping
whoa.
polluters?
We're not going to get any very far by talking on top of each other so that no one can hear. If you ask a question, you have to give the witness an
I
opportunity
do not
to
have to
respond.
have the witness attack me. Not
He was never attacking her. He was simply pointing out the fact that she doesn't know the law. And as a member of Congress, obviously that is concerning. Now, I'm not surprised by the fact that Rosa DeLauro doesn't know shit from Shinola, but it definitely is something that should be addressed. Of course, it won't be. Hopefully, she will retire in the very near future. Let me say thank you so much to AOB22, who says, happy to match it up for Zach, who spikes the football Monday through Friday. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. And Ave Hate or AH64 says, best news anywhere. Thanks, Zach and Lisa. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much to Sean Joe for the shades. Thank you to Dixie for 1,000 gold pills matching. Love you, RP. Thank you for all you do. Thank you, my friend. Thank you to Sean Joe for 3 cans as well. I appreciate you. And G Fontez says, LOL, can anybody relate to how many times I've heard, you're always right, from Democrats? And that's funny. I don't know any Democrats in my personal life, so I don't get that satisfaction, but I just get to report on it 5 days a week. All right, now, this is a story that I was pleasantly surprised to see. Google's co-founder, Sergey Brin, has now joined the ranks of Silicon Valley executives who are turning on the left. Of course, I think that he lives in California. That may have something to do with it. He's got more money than he will ever be able to spend, but he is now warning California that their move towards socialism is going to be disastrous because, of course, there is a proposed tax on billionaires, and he would be one of those people who would have to pay it. Now, Brin has spent about $57 million in recent months attempting to back efforts to defeat this measure, which would impose a one-time 5% tax on billionaires. These efforts have included funding political groups who oppose the measure and coordinating along with other wealthy donors. He said, I fled socialism with my family in 1979, and I know the devastating, oppressive society that it created in the Soviet Union. I don't want California to end up in the same place. He's also shifted his primary residence to the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe ahead of this December deadline, which is tied to the tax, and he continues to spend a good portion of his time in California. Of course, California state government is not happy about that. He has also become one of the largest individual political donors in California during this election cycle. He's funding a variety of various nonprofits. These are ones focused almost exclusively on opposing new taxes and government spending. He's also been involved in organizing opposition among Silicon Valley executives. He's spent his time contacting donors and participating in strategy sessions related to ballot initiatives aimed at blocking the tax. One of the reasons I enjoy this story is because I find it so delicious in its irony. Sergey was, of course, one of those people who literally cried when President Trump was elected back in 2016. He went on stage at a Google event and basically held a 2-hour struggle session with the employees of Google as they all collectively wrung their clothes and tore their hair out and screamed at the top of their lungs at the sky, cursing a God they didn't even believe in because they believed that President Trump was going to bring in fascism. Of course, that didn't happen. President Trump is not a fascist. But I'll tell you what, socialism is very real, and it seems to have taken over California. He also, strangely enough, donated to the Republican National Committee and attended a number of events that were hosted by President Trump. He's also been appointed to a White House Technology Council, and he's backed candidates in California's governor's race. In March, he donated $11 million to a group that was supporting a Democrat candidate before later contributing about $400,000 to a Republican candidate that was endorsed by President Trump. And his political activity has coincided with his relationship with Geraldine Gilberto Soto. She is a self-described holistic health coach and Trump supporter. I don't know anything about her, but she has called President Trump her bestie. She's attended events at Mar-a-Lago and the White House, and she criticized YouTube when they suspended President Trump's account, calling it an abomination. So this proposed tax is obviously drawing oppositions from a lot of wealthy people, donors, business leaders who have pointed out that it's going to lead to further flight from California, capital drain, and reducing investment within the state. It's already led to Elon Musk and Tesla and his organizations leaving California. Britain is estimated to be worth about $260 billion, which puts him in the group of the richest people in the world. He no longer plays an executive role at Alphabet. He stepped down in 2019, but he is still, of course, a co-founder, and he remains on the board. So he's got significant voting power, and he remains continue to be involved in the company. What I would really, really enjoy is to see Google and Alphabet as a whole pull themselves out of California as a result of this continued push to the left, because that would simply be devastating for the state. All right. Now, I think that we will go ahead and call it there, you guys, because we already talked about King Charles earlier in the show. He did give a speech before Congress, and when he mentioned that America was coming up on its 250th birthday, there was a round of applause that came from the members of Congress. I thought that was pretty great. All right. Before we move out and go through the final thank yous, you guys, I want to remind everybody that the 250th birthday of America is, in fact, coming up. 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and, of course, the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever seen. Perfect moment for you to teach your kids about why this country matters, not just the fireworks and the hot dogs, but the story behind it all. So good thing there is the free kids guide to America's 250th birthday. It's honestly a great way to introduce your kids or grandkids to how America began, who those founding fathers were, what it was they risked, and why those ideas they fought for still matter even today, even more today, I would suggest. So this guide is going to send those kids back to the moment when the brave men who signed the Declaration of Independence put pen to paper, knowing full well they were risking their lives for freedom. It's going to break it all down in a way that's easy to understand, and more importantly, they are going to enjoy. It's not going to water it down or turn it into boring schoolwork. And if you care about raising kids who know just where this country came from, why it is worth preserving, this is something you're going to want to grab. The best part is it is completely free. All you do is pay $2 for the shipping and handling. And to get it, you just got to head to freeusabirthday.com. That is freeusabirthday.com. Or you can go to the QR code that you see on screen, or the link will show up below. But the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday is waiting there for your kids today, because America's story matters, and we got to make sure that the next generation knows it. Thank you very much to the Kids Guide and to Rumble. All right, final thank yous over here on a Rumble. First of all, Principled Enigma, he says, this might be hard to swallow for some, but we live within the context of a universal war between our Heavenly Father and his adversary. You are correct. This is spiritual warfare, and there really is no end to what we're going through, guys. This is going to be an eternal tug or push and pull. And you know, the battles we win today are going to be waged once again by our progeny in the future. So there will be another message, it looks like, because that says 1 of 2. So we'll wait to see what that says. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie and the can. And while I'm waiting for Principled Enigma's second message to come up, I'm just going to check and make sure that I haven't missed anything over on Cash App. Yes, Linda. Linda says, thanks for all your reporting. Thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And I might as well go ahead and check Ko-Fi. If you guys want to donate outside of the streaming platforms, you can donate on Cash App. It is $Zak Paine, ZakPaine. There is a picture of a Chihuahua, which is my dog Cisco. I mean, it's not actually Cisco, but it's an artistic depiction of Cisco. And you can also go to ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/redpill78 to donate. And when you do that, it actually shows up on screen and you can send a message. Okay, Principled Enigma's second message. What you are witnessing in people that irrational and inexplicably logical is what I call spiritual insanity. The Bible describes it, and it has been given over to one's own ways. You are absolutely correct. All right, Sherry, I see you over there. She says, thanks, Zach and Lisa. We appreciate you both, sending so much love. Such amazing friends. Great show, Zach. You'll always do an excellent job. God bless y'all. Sherry, did I hear that you are also now expecting a baby? My mother told me that you are expecting a baby, and I wanted to say congratulations. Congratulations to Sherry and her family, her growing family. And hopefully very soon you guys are going to have everything sorted out. You're going to have a beautiful place for you and your husband and your kids to raise that new addition to your family. So congratulations, Sherry. I'm so happy for you. And please, we must continue to pray. I believe his name was Tim from earlier in the show. It wasn't planned. Probably not at this particular time, I can imagine. All right, you guys. The Kenzie fam, thank you so much, who says, keep rumbling like a rock star on Rumble Wallet. I appreciate that. All right, you guys. Thank you for being here. Good luck. God bless. And I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck and God bless. You guys, don't forget to hit that like button before you go. There will be also all of the other sponsors of the program in the description of the video. When you support those sponsors, you are directly supporting my program. And of course, you're also supporting the American patriot businesses, the people who own those businesses. Many of them are actually in the chat every single day watching the show, and really do appreciate them for supporting the show as well. Thank you very much, guys. We'll talk to you soon.